So today we're going to continue what we've been going over in terms of the Ubuntu Magic project. We are now live on TikTok and on YouTube. So this is going to be starting the official channel. The official show is beginning just now. Let me just make sure everything is set up properly. Bang. Okay. So what we're going over today is the turn. We started off with the pledge, and now we are on the second segment of the Ubuntu Magic, and it's focusing on the turn. Like I mentioned before, we're talking about basically the concept of the prestige. And the prestige, the magic trick in this movie, compiled of three parts, and it was the pledge, the turn, and the prestige. In the first episode, which you can now view on YouTube and on clips within the TikTok and Facebook on Mr. Responsible and Associates, is basically like tapping into the aspect of what is the original presentation of Africa for African Americans. How was African Americans introduced to Africa? And this is something that was brought about in terms of two different sides of the spectrum. There's one side where it's more focused on basically, giving you a more of a demonization of Africa to where you don't want to associate with it. And then from there, some people may rebel and try to get, more information about Africa, but it's coming from a lens of basically, fantasy and mythology. And like you have a concept that is based upon your readings, but not really immersed in the modern day of what Africa actually is. And then in the midst of, this process, as we are taking in information about Africa from an African American viewpoint, we can kind of get into the point of trying to really dissect what's going on, but from a Western viewpoint, because that's the education and we speak an English language, and all of this, it kind of decontextualizes a lot of what Africa actually is versus what is being taught. So in the confusion, this is what we're going to talk about in the turn, which is the next segment of this magic trick that is going on, which is bringing the amnesia of Africa to the African American. And it's basically like just bringing a lot of confusion to where the African American doesn't even know where to start if they return back to Africa, where they can originally, find who they really truly are. So what happens is that, there's a lot of disassociation from those on the land of Africa, because the media portrayal of both sides, like African Americans are shown to Africans in a way that they may be seeing us as gangsters or like 50 Cent or, like type of ways that they don't really understand African Americans because it's being portrayed through like the gangsterism portrayal of hip hop. And there's a lot more depth that Africans may understand, but it has to happen when these two people come into contact with each other, which I've been able to experience. So, in Gishlala Etequini Amayakanani, I've been living in Etequini for 4 years now. And in Gipume Peshia in Dolobini Flani, I'm originally from New Orleans, and it's a small town in America. And basically, like I've been able to have both sides of the coin. I've been able to be the person before you go to Africa to kind of have that mindset, and then I've had my mind open from being in Africa actually and breaking a lot of the constructs that I've been taught before. I've actually been able to experience the people, experience the culture, and kind of get a real grasp on what is this big, fruitful area of life that is the origin of mankind from my learnings. So what we're going to be going over today is basically the pledge has turned into the turn. Like first they show us the pledge. That's what the three parts of the magic trick. It's like they show you the thing, they make it disappear, and then they make it come back. That will make a magic trick full. So we're going to focus on the disappearing act, which is really focusing on how the amnesia of Africa comes about once you're an African American in America, where you don't have as many reminders or relics to kind of remind you of who you truly are. There's no language that somebody can say, oh, this is what you truly are. It's more just more and more confusion that's layered on top of each other. So as we go forward, if you want to like read along, you can follow on my Substack. It's called Mr. Responsible on Substack. And there's also aspects of being able to tap into the YouTube live. If you're on TikTok right now, you can go to YouTube at Responsible and you will see the actual presentation that I have going on alongside the talk. But if you're on TikTok, just enjoy the conversation. If you like what you hear, you can just engage, show some love. And yeah, we're going to keep it pushing. So the turn. First of all, I just want to highlight the fact that a lot of this information is being sourced from my research repository, which is my feed. And my feed, I give information about basically, I pose questions to my audience, and they kind of give me feedback about these type of things. And this is what my page is meant to be. And this is a tool basically for me to be able to build expression that's based in research, so that I'm not only coming from my viewpoint. So you can see that we have here basically some of the insights that I was able to gather from the comments, and it's broken to different sections based upon the similarities or the differences that people may have opinions on. And that's something that brings about the fact of what we're going to be talking about today, which is the turn. It's a lot of confusion that takes place. Some people, may see that there's a diaspora connection between, Africans and African Americans, like, and more so talking about the Southern Africans, because that's more of where I am. And I was just posing a question of, do they feel like the people that speak more of a Bantu Nguni language, do they have a connection with African Americans? And some people feel like they did, but other people, you can see they just felt like there was no cultural connection, and there's more of a West African, lineage that African Americans are sourced from. And some people see that there's the Africans that predated Columbus in America, and there's different like religious similarities between basically the Hebrew customs that a lot of people in America are, familiar with in terms of reading the Bible, the Old Testament of the Bible, or the New Testament. And like when I was being in South Africa, I was able to experience some of the Shembe, practices, and a lot of, just the similarities that you may find in the Old Testament and the Bible is practiced in the rules of, Mbini or Kokstad or Port Shepstone, where I've been able to visit. And that is something that has given me insight that there is a lot more similarities religiously, and people feel that way as well. And I'm getting that information from my comments, and I'm able to include it in my articles. So yeah, other information is just categorized, and then we put it in this format of a journey map, which we will go over. But before we get deeper in that, I just want to start off with this fourth passage of the turn, which is going to kind of give where we left off, which is basically like trying to have a more objective view. And I've been able to be blessed to bring my family, sorry, Mdini Wami, Uvakshela, Itukwini, last year around this time, and my family came here, and they was able to actually have an exchange at the school that I teach at, in Kwaningezi. And those was something that was able to give like level of opening up the minds of people that come from Africa. I mean, come from Africa, and those that come from America, and kind of give them an exchange so that they can see each other. And that's the kind of work that I like to do in terms of my page and what I'm doing on this AFRO-LIT 101. It's basically trying to build that bridge through these works, but this takes steps to get there. So just going off into what we're going to be talking about today, let's start with the first paragraph of the turn section, and it's going to be the fourth passage. So alleviating personal attachments can lead towards cognitive neutrality, which may assist in the detoxification process necessary for a more compassionate comprehension. So this sentence is basically just speaking towards the fact that before you, want to start to discover and learn about, someplace else, you kind of got to like have more of a detachment from your personal bias, so that you can have more of a neutrality when you're taking in this information. And, you start to build basically a framework over time. But in the beginning, you got to have more of a detox from your Western, based mindset, if you're an African American that's trying to learn about Africa, because that's the message that we're trying to put here. Is basically like the journey from that visiting Africa mindset towards, what I have experienced now in Islala, Itaquini, Amayaka Nani. Um, so the importance of these adjustments may not be evident to those currently comfortable in stagnant circumstances, but many of our predecessors had to forcibly sacrifice their well-being for these descendants to experience the results of their more transformative example. So we're just speaking about acknowledging, how a lot of the ancestors that was, maybe on a slave ship, or, there's some level of migration in Africa before, they came and had to experience the chattel slavery of America. That was something that they had to build a mindset of being malleable, of being adjusting, and being able to shift into new places. And those that are in American currently are kind of more in a stagnant environment. And if you're comfortable in that stagnant environment, you may not notice the importance of these adjustments that you may have to make when you want to, tap back in and kind of alleviate your basically personal attachments from being, in this place where your transformation is kind of already plotted out for you. There isn't as much of a way forward that is more of an organic development. It's more that this is something that is already planned out for you. And wait, let me see. I think I lost connection on my. Thank you, Nelson. I appreciate you, my brother. Let me just set up my thing one more time. I think I had a disconnection. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. If you guys are on TikTok, make sure you share and make sure some more people come in as we're going to break this down. We're going to be going for probably like an hour here. So yeah, let's just keep it pushing. Let me just try to get my thing set back up. About okay. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Just give me 1 second as I tap back in. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, it should be good in a second. Join video. Okay, bow. Window. Okay, share that. Okay, let me set this up. All right, sorry about that, guys. Just give me 1 second as I try to get this up and going. Again, I have to get this documented on my YouTube, so I have to make sure it's set up. Okay, now I'll be back on. We're live. Okay, make sure everything is back connected. Okay, we back live. I see. All right, so TikTok, sorry about that, but yeah, continue to tap in if you guys want to just engage, just share, let the people know that we are live, and we're going to continue now going forward. Let me see. Sorry if y'all saw that fine woman in the back. You know what I'm saying? That's my go-to woman. Shorty looking good. You know what I mean? Got the towel on, looking like a fox. I'm blessed. Put my head down. All right. Sorry, guys. Real life. All right. So we left the last of, I'm just going to read from the top again so that we can get it going. So, alleviating personal attachments can lead towards cognitive neutrality, which may assist in the detoxification process necessary for a more compassionate comprehension. The importance of these adjustments may not be evident to those currently comfortable in stagnant circumstances, but many of our predecessors had to forcibly sacrifice their well-being for these descendants to experience the results of their more transformative example. Behind the heavily debated myriad of migrations throughout Africa, along with the subsequent exodus towards the Americas, the underlying shifts in mentality of the travelers are consistent. Change remains the constant source of momentum, strengthening the adaptive nature while also guiding the wiser of their posterity's intuitive foresight, determining definitive behavior based upon these inherited inclinations is validated by modern pursuits that may advance our cerebral malleability in a contemporary age. So I wrote this paragraph, just based upon these concepts of the constant migrations that African Americans have experienced, and then that kind of builds an inherited basically ability to adjust and be resilient in any type of situation. And I think that is something that we don't take for granted, but some people may be more comfortable in stagnant situations, and that is something that they kind of they deprive themselves of actually being able to. They've deprived themselves of being able to really tap into their full potential. When you even in today, there's more innovations that we constantly have to like tap into in terms of technology. Making you have to adjust, and there's just a endless amount of you being able to have to tap into what your ancestors had to do in terms of upgrading your experience based upon the forces that you are coming in contrast with, and coming in contact with, and that is something that is an advantage if you can just get used to it and remain adaptable, because that is something that is going to strengthen you to be able to basically set up a situation to where you can visit outside of the stagnant and transform beyond the limits that they kind of give you as an African American. Because what you want to kind of have is more of an organic development versus only being on a spectrum that is allowed for you as an African American. When they tell you you start from some level of chattel slavery, and then from there your limits is either going to maybe being a capitalist or an entertainer or a politician. You want to kind of tap into more of an organic development, because those areas they can just see that you're not going to be a threat to the power structure in a sense. You have to kind of go into more of a tapping into your true organic development, which can only come from your being outside of that Western environment. And there's people that are on the continent of Africa that are currently still remaining, culturally endowed in their basically customs that have come from the ancient times. And as you connect with that, you can kind of get a sense of how you would apply that to your own development and more of an organic development than the transformation that's allowed in America today. And a lot of this is going to be tapping into how we reverse engineer this is, we basically, like I said, we take the initial step of gathering information from the followers on Instagram, TikTok, and then we are able to now take that information and put it into a format using this tool called a journey map. And this journey map serves as an organizational tool to help outline an expressive offering and recognize the phases you want your audience to experience and what insights will guide your connection. So on each of these points of connection, you can see that we've been through the pledge side of it. We've spoken on the practices that are, different than what have been told to African Americans. And like these things have now been placed into our articles and is being sourced from that harmony map where we was able to have the insights and put them in categories. And right now we're kind of discussing the different paths of the migrations that took place and how, this is bringing some level of confusion to anybody that wants to know more about the African American, because some people believe that they may be sourced from West Africa. The slavery situation kind of just jumbled it up to where there is no authentic understanding of what is accurate. So this brings a lot of confusion, and this is part of the turn phase. And we're going to talk more about how this has affected African Americans and the perception that they have. And this is the main thing that we're going to be going over today is basically like, what are we doing on, in this confusion? Because this is a feeling that we have to get across. And the feeling of confusion is kind of like, it switches the perception that people may have. And it's some that is like people are African Americans are ashamed of claiming their West African ancestry because West Africa is one of the poorest. This is some of the comments that people were giving me. African American women are very close in manner to West Africans in behavior. Mainstream historians, archaeologists, linguistics, and geneticists do not consider these similarities sufficient evidence of Hebrew ancestry. So this is some of the religious similarities that they're tapping into, that is a big part of when we go on that pathway as African Americans are trying to identify ourselves. Some people go down the path of using the Bible as a source, and or even Islam, like they've been practices of people claiming themselves as the lost tribe of Sabash or the lost tribes of Israel, and that is something similar to what I've experienced as well along this journey. Is seeing that there is some similarities in terms of the Exodus or the beginning stories of the Bible and what happened to the Israelites, and is similar to the African American plight. And that is something that people have also picked up and think of when they are now confused in the state, and they kind of just trying to grasp on anything to fill that void, to kind of understand better of who they actually are. So this is something that I see is something that is common towards people in Africa as well, because they've also have been through some harsh things, and they also see that some of the traditions and customs as Nguni speaking people mirrored those in ancient Egypt, including how they buried their kings, and the biblical way is to use Jesus Christ as your middleman, while the Nguni way is to go through your ancestors. So this is some of the religious similarities that you may find in Christianity and the customs of people in Africa today. And we're going to talk about that. We include that in our next passage. This is just showing like how we basically are able to turn our community into basically a feedback and a tunnel to be able to feed our articles, so that I could be a voice, for those that I want to represent, rather than just only coming from my own perspective and my own learnings. I'm making sure that everything that I do is involving the community that I'm building on TikTok, and with my engagement with people here in South Africa in person. So we're going to go into the fifth passage now and kind of break down more of this, Christianity similarity to the African customs that I was able to experience in the Bini, in terms of like, the slaughtering, the hoofed animals. It's basically a lot of the ceremonial instructions. We're going to go into as we read this fifth passage. So, traditional rites of passage, ceremonial instructions, and patrilineal clan structures that carefully preserved genealogies may be exclusively attributed to the Hebraic commandments in the Bible's Old Testaments by those disconnected from ancient African customs. Additionally, the New Testament worship of a Christ figure used to invoke a higher power also carries familiarity with the ritual acknowledgement of ancestors found in the antique covenants predating popular Western religions. So again, you can see that this was sourced directly from, the comments that I was able to get from my feedback, and this has been able to feed my journey map And my journey map is just giving me the connection points that I want to make when I'm going forward in terms of creating this piece. So this is just the reverse engineering process that I would like to show of how we go from the actual article, and then we show that this is coming sourced from the journey map, which is sourced from the harmony map and the insights that I was able to get from my community. Going forward, um, being ultimately limited to channeling. That's where we stopped. Yes, being ultimately limited to channeling our closest deceased relatives shouldn't prevent African Americans from prioritizing synchronization with their own bloodlines in congruence with the parasocial deification encouraged in Christianity. So, in terms of us being separated from, Africa in a sense, we are kind of limited to only channeling a connection with our immediate ancestors versus those in Africa being able to have their clan songs. They have a lot of ways to basically represent what is going on. I think I've lost my connection again. Okay, we're back on. I don't know why it's dropping in and out now. I need to make sure that this is going straight. But again, I'm saying being ultimately limited to channeling our closest deceased relatives shouldn't prevent African Americans from prioritizing synchronization with their own bloodlines in congruence with the parasocial deification encouraged in Christianity. Alienating immediate contributors to one's personal existence in exchange for symbolic unification with a supposed representative of all mankind can be argued as an intentional rerouting of sacred energy to be harvested through outright predatory deception. So we're getting into what was behind a lot of the missionaries that was trying to convert, Africans to Christianity, and when they knew that they practiced this kind of ancestral practice, but now converting that energy to more of a Christ figure that's supposed to represent all mankind rather than you doing this practice with your ancestors that may be, closely related to you. And that is something as African Americans, we're kind of limited to only channeling to our immediate ancestors because we've been, displaced and disassociated from our real roots. And this is something that continues to allow us to kind of replace that with this Christ figure, and from there a lot of people have a parasocial deification of Christ where it's like a celebrity that they are able to just fill that void and have a relationship with, and that is what is encouraged through Christianity mainly. And Christianity is not that it's saying that that process is wrong, but it shouldn't replace basically your acknowledgement of your own ancestors. In the like, if you want to still acknowledge Christ, that's fine, but in the same midst of that, you should also put some of your own immediate bloodline on that pedestal as well, so that you can kind of tap in and not only be usurping the energy towards this predatory deception that may be causing you to give up your energy that is very powerful for you to kind of connect with your truth. Just finishing off this fifth passage, presumptuous accusations such as these could be heralded as far-fetched if it weren't for the countless catastrophes suffered at the hands of the empires that shadowed the missionary spread in this ostensibly glorified narrative. So behind a lot of, the catastrophes he suffered at the hands of the empires that shadowed the ministries is more talking about the colonialism and the imperialism that followed after, people came with the cross and with the Bible. It was like a trade of the Bible for the land, or some level of just replacing what you are already practicing and demonizing that, so that now you can now turn over to it. You're giving your energy to something that is foreign to you, but now you are replacing it, and because it's a glorified narrative that allows for you to assimilate into the world culture, or so to say. So this again is just showing how we are tapping into each part of this journey map. We've been through the paths, we've been through the perception, the practices, and the pledge, and now we're going to get into more of the prestige, which is basically there's two sides to this prestige. It's like um, the side of it where the magic trick is complete to where you just completely disappear. Your African roots as an African American just completely disappear, and now you just assimilate fully into being an American. And then there's the other side of it, which I coined Ubuntu magic, which is basically like you being able to still maintain your African identity in the midst of this magic shit going on. It's something that combats, and that is something that the Prestige was kind of about. It was about these two magicians that was going back and forth to kind of pull, the leg of each other so that they can be the best magician. But in the midst of it, it isn't really any magic going on. It's only just them trying to figure out each other's illusion. And that's the real key to what's going on here. Like everything that is going on in terms of this magic trick that's given African Americans the amnesia of Africa is really just a magic trick that you just have to figure out and kind of like dissect before you just, fall fully victim to what's going on. And that is kind of like the process of what I want to break down in here and why I'm sharing this with you guys. So yeah, I appreciate the people that have been tuning in on TikTok. Again, if you would like to, see the full presentation, you can tap in on YouTube at Responsible, and you will find the articles that we're reading and be able to read along. But thank you guys, and I'm going to continue going forward. For those on YouTube, continue tapping in. Let's see what we have. We're going to go forward now towards the sixth passage, where we are going to break down further, what we have seen in terms of leading up to towards the prestige. And we left last off talking about how the Christianity is more of deceiving, in a sense, you from really worshiping, your own, not even worshiping, just acknowledging your own ancestry. And people in African American cultures kind of have taken that to the far extreme of really just like demonizing Africa in a sense. And if that's the case, this is what it leads to. It leads to more of a dependency within what we're going to talk about of this ideological superstructure. And this is something that is kind of a Marxism framework, but we're going to break it down and show how it also applies to, what's happening in terms of this magic trick. So the spiritual enslavement layered upon the erasure of accurate origins manufactures a superstructure dependent on belief in a common ideology that fosters now-resistant assimilation. So again, this is basically like once you have the spiritual enslavement of you now adopting Christianity or even Islam, you're now layering that belief upon the erasure of accurate origins, and that manufactures a superstructure, which is basically like an ideology that a culture will, have, and then from that ideology, they kind of build an economic base based upon, shaping a new ideology, and that maintains the economic base. So now, the superstructure that is created, it makes the African American that is now spiritually enslaved and their origins are erased. Now they're dependent on this belief in the common ideology that fosters now resistant assimilation. And you can see that a lot of the Christian frameworks are more of, turning the other cheek, not really going for answers, and more of like a Martin Luther King approach in his earlier days than a Malcolm X approach. That is more like, separatist. And, in the beginning, this is what the Nation of Islam was trying to practice, is more of a resistance. And what they was fighting against is the other ways that was more of a passive and, you know, more of a just turning the other cheek type of approach. And this is what kind of is the superstructure that people are dependent on. That the economics of America is kind of dependent on African Americans being subject to this dependency of the superstructure of spiritual enslavement and erasure of your origins. And this is the full, magic trick. That's why we're saying the prestige will kind of just show the two sides of what is the goal of the magician to kind of make you erase your African lineage and fully assimilate into being an American versus like the other way, which is you still keeping your African identity in the midst of it. So even through these attempts at complete dismemberment are futile due to anatomy's genetics, temporary separation from our primordial kinfolk is achieved through the adopted indulgence of cooperating with the scriptural performance. Unnecessary points of contention emerge once unfounded arrogance prompts the newly converted to persuade outsiders that considering the path they discovered would show obedience to the infinite campaign against any form of hereditary reverence. So this is also tapping into like what happens when these new, I guess you new born again Christians or even like in the form of Israelites, like they go to try to convert, people into a new way, and especially they kind of demonize a lot of people that practice any other form of hereditary reverence. And even though I, make the opinion that these attempts are futile because of the Ubuntu magic that is within our anatomy's genetics, and that even whenever you're born, no matter where you are, you have a level of humanization that goes against this, I guess judgment towards people for just practicing their true way of living. The temporary separation, from our primordial kinfolk is basically like our separation is still temporarily allowing us to, adopt um, just this new way of, performing what is basically written by those in the Bible for you to kind of, disassociate from anything that isn't, the way of Christ or the way of the chosen people. And the way of the chosen people just kind of eliminates any other practice that may be found in Africa, which is actually more of your true origin, which I'm showing has a connection and it has predated a lot of what you may see in the Abrahamic constructs. And that's kind of like how I finished this sixth passage off. Is tracing international lineage becomes irrelevant once this extreme level of dissociation takes precedence over understanding how this particular Abrahamic construct has contributed to their current disenfranchisement. It's a lot of big words in this, but yeah, man, this is really what's happening here. Okay. Um, where was I at? I feel like I need to read this passage again because it's very dense in terms of its impact on, the real turn of the situation and leading into the prestige. And I want to kind of give a good take of just how important, one is in terms of really understanding the level of disassociation that takes place once you really are dependent on a superstructure that funds basically the economic structure of America. Is you can have these African Americans in the country if they are non-resist. I mean, if they are non-resistant and assimilated into the culture, it makes it a safe person, and your transformation isn't a threat at any point because you aren't having an organic development back to what you truly was. So spiritual enslavement, layered upon the erasure of accurate origins, manufactures a superstructure dependent on belief in a common ideology that fosters non-resistant assimilation. Even though these attempts at complete dismemberment are futile due to our anatomy's genetics, temporary separation from our primordial kinfolk is achieved through the adapted indulgence of cooperating with the scriptural performance. Unnecessary points of contention emerge once unfounded arrogance prompts the newly converted to persuade outsiders that considering the path they discovered will show obedience to the infinite campaign against any form of hereditary reverence, any other form of hereditary reverence. Tracing international lineage becomes irrelevant once this extreme level of dissociation takes precedence over understanding how this particular Abrahamic construct has contributed to their current disenfranchisement. So that is like the summary of really what the turn is all about. And it really just captures the plan of what the magician is trying to do in terms of confusing you on what your true history is. And the goal of that is really to put you in a state to where you can better serve the American agenda, which is basically like you being subservient to the superstructure of Christianity, of capitalism, and being on a transformation spectrum to something that is controllable. Like there is no threat when you are on that spectrum, but when you break from this and you start to, resist and rebel against it and kind of have more of an organic development that's tied into what hasn't been measured in terms of, more African traditional customs, that's when you're breaking off from these Abrahamic constructs that have brought some level of disenfranchisement, and you start to see the relevance of basically tapping into something that preceded all of this matrix that you are now a part of. So now we are going into the prestige, which is breaking out of this amnesia of Africa, and really like embodying your true Ubuntu magic. This is the goal is what we're going to do, and we're going to like be going just over one more paragraph as we get into this prestige. But I just want to kind of give an essence of what my feedback from my audience was giving me and able to write this portion, and I'll give you a little taste of the prestige before we check out. But basically, in this prestige, which is phase 5, what you will be doing is people are like, you can just see that the Ubuntu is engraved in a black man and practiced and taught. And basically, they're just saying that no matter where you are, no matter where you're born, even if you're a South African today, generations from now, that Ubuntu spirit is going to be in the offspring of your what's the word? With the offspring of your offspring, your offspring of your offspring, of your posterity. I'm sorry, it's going to be in the offspring of your posterity, and no matter what happens in between that situation, you could be migrating anywhere else, but in the midst of you just having a melanated child and bloodline that is still tied into your genetics, you're going to always be able to tap into something, no matter what dismemberment or what transformation that tries to take a place upon you and your mindset. At the end of the day, you can always have an inner spirit of being able to tap into that Ubuntu magic that will allow for you to combat any of the magic that tries to have you have an amnesia of your true self, which African Americans are going through, and we are on the rise of like reclaiming our African state of mind. Also, what was be going on is the thinking around this time is that Ubuntu is not engraved on everyone. Maybe they lost it deliberately or through suffocation. Jim Crow and apartheid are big contributors to that, and we are similar. This is somebody speaking about African Americans and those in Africa. We are similar because of our experience of living in cellular colonial states, and we share the same experiences of hardship. So these are some of the comments that I was able to get from my feedback. And people also have an idea of Africans that predated, Columbus and was in America beforehand. And this is like just some people that was able to just tap into like, oh, my brother, did you know that our ancestors was once lived in America with the American indigenous people? If you research our language like Soto, Swana, Spedi, you would know the similarity in pronunciation and sound that is still used in our language to this day. And yeah, a lot of people were giving me different insights of how we may have African lineage that are tied to America. Um, when people were disassociated, people were saying that it was more of a Western African, but this was a really good comment here. It said, you said Southern African, so Angola is part of Southern Africa. Brazil, the overwhelming majority, over 4 million of enslaved Angolians were shipped to Brazil, specifically ports in Rio de Janeiro, Bahia, and to labor on sugar and coffee plantations as well as in gold mines in North America. They were the first enslaved Africans in the 13 colonies. Spanish Americans, substantial numbers of captives were sent to Spanish controlled territories, including the Caribbean and the Rio de la Plata region in South America. So they're saying that, in the Angola area, which is more of Central Africa, and they also have a story of migration towards Southern Africa. So the different pathways that have taken place may also share that people that may have more of the Nguni or Bantu language versus the West Africans may also have some level of connection to those African Americans. And this is something that we're just trying to just source in terms of being able to supply our article with research backed by our audience as we get into just a little bit of what the prestige is going to be about. So when we talk about the Ubuntu magic, just to give a more insight about that, that is more of like the humanity that we, see that is anti basically what is happening when people are subjected in every aspect through this capitalistic and imperialist and colonialist type of viewpoint. Like the Ubuntu side of things is more of, we are because I am, I believe is the saying, but I believe that, deeper than that is more of just being able to have human to human connection and being able to always keep that above any type of, subjective type of attitude towards anybody. Like you also want to have some level of humanity in your everyday practice. And I feel like these type of connections between African Americans and Americans, African Americans and Africans kind of they don't have that necessarily practice as much because so many people aren't basically in direct connection with each other. They're more so engaging online. And in that aspect, there's a lot of space for people to just have their thoughts without the human, capacity within it. Like people can just throw a thought out there without being able to see the person face to face. But when you meet people and you kind of, come face to face with people, it's a different type of exchange. And that is something that I've been able to be blessed to be able to experience as I have been living in South Africa, and it's really given me a level of understanding of how we also practice this in America. When African, when anybody comes to where I'm from, and get pull me Peshea and Dolobin and Flani and New Orleans, and we have a real like Southern hospitality to where we will invite you, show you a good time, make sure that you have everything that you need to be set up, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, and that is something that we practice, across the diaspora. But I think when we are only engaging online, we kind of lose this. But as we continue to build these bridges, hopefully we'll be able to have some trips from those that are connected with me in South Africa back to America, and then also vice versa. Some of the people that are my African American friends back home, I can have them come to South Africa. I've already had Mduni Wami, Uvakshela here in Kwaningezi in Etiquini area. They've tried to learn isiZulu a little bit, Ingefunde isiZulu Tani, but yes. I will just finish off with this last passage so that we can cut off for the day and then fully go into the prestige at a later time. So, escaping the dehumanization exuded in northern Africa by the Arabic branch of this monotheistic conquest partially influenced the southward relocation of its previous inhabitants towards the equator, as those who remained either intermediate. So, we're talking about sorry, as those who remained either intermarried into Islamic fold or served as domestic workers, the travelers who resisted surrendering their own sense of humane expression found themselves expanding in directions where the host communities were more familiar. So this is kind of talking about kind of like the migration from Northern Africa, which is, also one of the background of the information I was able to get from the feedback. You can see that some of the feedback that people were saying, um, they gave me some information just about how some people from that are currently in Southern Africa may have migrated, from the Islamic slave trades that was going on pre the transatlantic slave trade, and that kind of pushed some people to migrate south to escape the Arab slave traders. And people say they have worked in many African countries and they are different and more peaceful, but at the same time, there is a level of Islamic just presence more so than where you will find in other African countries, and that is something that grew over time in combat with the British imperialism and colonialism, and those are two fronts that was kind of pushing Africans to kind of move more southward towards the equator, and some people did stay, and if they did stay, they more so intermarried into the Islamic fold and kind of picked up those practices. But those who resisted that, intermarrying and going into the Islamic fold, they kind of traveled towards places where they found more of a humane host. And that is more of that, finding people that are more of your own, complexion of your own practice versus people that are, trying to practice some level of slave trade amongst you. So this is before the trend of objectifying mankind intensified to the extremities of colonial industrialization. The cultural exchanges that occurred throughout Western, Central, and Southern Africa were drastically less opportunistic. Even abroad, during extended explorations towards the Americas that predated Columbus, the imperialistic motives common amongst European nations were not evident in the encounters executing reciprocal trades of indigenous produce across the Atlantic. So, as you can see, once we get into the aspect of the African exchanges with America before Columbus and before the capitalism and imperialism that persisted, it was more of a humane exchange that was going on because it was more of tied into what that Ubuntu magic is about, which is more of just seeing somebody as an equal versus trying to just see them as an opportunity to be able to build your colonial home or your colony. No, the colonies are trying to serve the basically the home that the colonies are serving, and people will come to Africa and trying to serve their homeland based upon building a colony and seeing the people there as just a way to serve basically the opportunity. And the trend of that became more and more intense as the European and British colonial kind of built a market that the Islamic slave trade was also participating in, and then from there, even it was some levels of Africans also participating in this because it was building a market that people could supply that demand that was happening. So before that was taking place, though, the exchanges between Africans and even indigenous Americans was more humane, and that is something that we are going to really just focus on in terms of the prestige going forward, which is the end of this magic trick. And once again, I'm feeding all of this information as sourced from my research repository, that is based upon the feedback that I'm able to get when I'm posing these questions to my community on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, and being able to really tap into the ideas so that this isn't a one-sided, article. And this is something that I look forward to doing going forward, is really having that dialogue and having that exchange as we continue the Afro-Lit 101, where we reverse engineer African literature. And hopefully, as you can see, you can do this for your own community about whatever, output that you would like to do. If you have a creative expression, maybe in music or in painting or in art, and even if it's a business, you want to go through the practice of making sure that everything that you do is based in research, because that gives you the first step without you having to like expend too much money or too much capital. Research is just a free tool for you to kind of not let your ideas linger, and once you're not letting your ideas linger, you're now building up a muscle to kind of be more of an executor, and that is a real key to being able to see your things that in your mind come to life. Is basically having the tool set to always have something to action in interviews, and just being able to use your social media to maybe pose a question and getting some feedback, and then being able to have the tool sets to be able to turn that into basically data analyzation, and then from there feed your expression with that basically information, is a process that we like to teach and we have been able to teach on this Afro-Lit 101. So if you looking towards learning more about that, you can go to the YouTube where this whole video will be posted, and it will give you basically those tool sets that will show you how to turn that feedback that you're getting into basically output, so that when you are making your creative expression, you aren't basically like just assuming that people will support you. It's more so that you have validated that, you know, people are actually interested in this, and you're speaking for somebody, and now your output is more valuable. It's like the main thing with artists today is that a lot of this stuff is like you're wishing and hoping on a prayer that somebody will support you, versus like really doing the work to validate your expression in research and making sure that you have a consumer base based upon, tapping in with people and identifying the connection points that will make your art basically valuable to them. And then once you have that, you have a community that you can now basically supply them with, you know, what they have demanded in terms of your interviews with them and your connections with them. So you can find all of this, you know, these tools further breaking down on the AFRO-LIT 101, streams going forward. But also you can find the full episodes on YouTube. I'm going to upload them to Twitch, and you'll see little clips here and there on Mr. Responsible and Associates on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all of the media feeds. So that's going to conclude our session for today. I wanted to see if they have any questions from anybody that have been tuning in. We have been on YouTube and TikTok. I appreciate those that have tuned in. I see that we have a lot of people that have joined. I wasn't able to read a lot of the comments. Yeah, yeah, thank you, my brother K. I appreciate you. Yes, my brother. And Puma. And Bongo, sorry. Is living in New Orleans now. Moved 3 weeks. Oh, word. Shout out to you, man. Welcome to my city. I hope that you enjoy. You should check out a couple restaurants. Wow, that's amazing. We got to tap in. One of my favorite restaurants you should check out is what's the name of it? I haven't been home in so long that I forgot the name of it. Upper Night. That's where my family from. I'm from the Lower Night. My family from the Lower Night Ward. That's so crazy, bro. Shout out to you, man. I'm happy that you finding home in my city. You know, and you went around. You say you only been there for 3 weeks now. Yeah, are you gonna be there for next year for Mardi Gras season? Have you experienced the festival season there? Any of the festivities in terms of downtown? I do love Antiquini. My Kote Wami is showing me around. She's able to get me settled in right. Um, oh, you've been in Louisiana for 3 years. Okay, dope, dope, dope. Man, that's really refreshing to see that you're here, man. I hopefully we'll be able to connect when I get back there, working here for the next year. Dope. That's what's up, man. Shout out to you, my brother. Um, Nah, that's really good to hear. I'm happy that people are tapping in back from my city. I miss my home a lot. I have a lot of family there, and it's been a while since I've been able to be back home. I'm planning on going back in 2028. That's when I'm planning on coming back. But in the meantime, so Nola drive. No, yeah, driving here is also crazy. It's oh, little sis. Okay, shout out to you. Shout out to you, sis. Sorry, sissy. Um, yeah, driving in South Africa is crazy as well. I had to drive on the other side of the road, but yeah, just be careful. They have a lot of police checkups in New Orleans. Like people try to just give you like a random checkpoint. They have a restaurant that I'm thinking of. I want you to visit. It's a vegan restaurant. I think it's called Vegan Soul Food. It's on Claiborne Avenue. If you ever find yourself on Claiborne, it's under the bridge. It's a restaurant called Vegan Soul Food. I think that's the name of it. ITEL Garden. No, it's called ITEL Gardens. ITL. Let me give you the name. Let me see if I can tap this in for you. Uh, no, that's super dope. Let me see. I gotta find my chat so I can type it in. But you should visit ITEL Gardens and tell them I said what's up. I have like a history in New Orleans. Yeah, go to ITEL Gardens. It's on Claiborne. ITAL Garden. And you'll enjoy it. You can get like it's like soul food. It's like vegan soul food, so you can like really enjoy it. Just still having that flavor of New Orleans and just flavor of Southern soul food, but now it's in a vegan aspect. But yeah, definitely enjoy that. I appreciate you tapping in, sis. Um, yeah, enjoy New Orleans, man. Make sure you enjoy. Listen to some New Orleans music. We have a lot of stuff. I'm pretty sure that you can see that the city doesn't sleep. There's a lot of, just constant, action with you going to French Quarter area. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're working, so you're not getting around as much. But once you do get around, you'll really see that the city is enjoyable. And that's really the Ubuntu magic that I'm talking about. It's like we are just as hospitable, as you know, I've been able to experience here in South Africa. It's like we have a Southern hospitality, and that is ingrained in us, no matter where you come from. As a black, as an African American, as Black people in the diaspora, we also have some level of just hospitality, and we kind of just put humane interactions before anything else. And I hopefully that we can kind of see this on the online aspect as well. But in humanity, in the real day-to-day connections that you may have, you can see that this is what's going to keep us connected, no matter what is the separation of diaspora wars online. People just claiming that they don't have African lineage, just all of the different things that people kind of try to disassociate from their African history. We also are always going to have that natural, humanistic aspect that will have us open to be able to have these exchanges when we see each other face to face. So shout out to Kay for showing love. I'm glad that you loving New Orleans. I'm loving South Africa. I'm loving Durban. I'm going to close out though. Appreciate y'all for tapping in. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. We're gonna tap back in on Friday. It's kind of cold right now in South Africa, so I don't think I'm gonna do my hike tomorrow. I'm gonna see. I may do my hike tomorrow, but most likely I'll check you guys again on Friday, where we're gonna complete this Ubuntu Magic. And yeah, man, this has been an excellent chat. If you want to see the full conversation, you can tap in on YouTube, and I'll post it just now. So peace out and much love.